record. So yeah, just to start off today, my name's Laura and I am the Nuffield coordinator here at CERC. So I am the person that's been on the end of all of the rest of your emails and things. And I've got Aileen Hamilton from CERC joining me today, and she's our National Partnerships Manager, and she works a lot on the STEM Ambassadors programme, which is definitely relevant to Nuffield. So just a few things before we get started. As I just said, we've just popped the recession on record just so that all of your colleagues who possibly can't make it today can still get all the information. If you could mute your mic during the presentations, I'm not bothered about your camera either way, to be honest with you, so feel free to leave it on and pop it off, it's up to you. And whilst we're chatting, feel free to pop any questions in the chat and I'll probably pick up on them as I go, but there'll be time for questions at the end as well. So we're just going to go through a few things today on how you can progress your Nuffield placement now that you've registered your interest. So I'm going to go through a wee bit of the Nuffield online system, a bit on safeguarding. I'm going to take you through the risk assessment form and the placement provider agreement, and show you the templates that we've got for slides to introduce yourself to the students that we match you to as well. Okie dokie, so I know that some of you have done this already, but also that many of you haven't yet. So first of all, I was just going to quickly walk you through exactly to add a placement on the Nuffield system. So first you go to the Nuffield Research Placements website, which is nuffieldresearchplacements.org, and you log into your account. So I think all of you have an account by now, but if you don't, you can create one on that website homepage as well, and then we'll get you activated from there, and then that will be you good to go to start creating a placement. So yeah, once you've logged in, you should reach a page that looks a little bit like this. And it'll have your organisation at the top there. So kind of for the purposes of this, I'm going to pretend to work at University of Edinburgh. And so I'm going to add my project. So I'm going to hit create new placement button there. And then that is going to take me to a screen that looks a wee bit like this. So select yourself as a project supervisor, and then at the bottom there you can tick any other colleagues that are going to be involved in the project. So make sure that they've signed up to get an account as well before you start adding your placements. And then you're going to add your placement title and your department and the main subject that your project falls under. And then in the also relevant section, you can tick as many other secondary subjects that are involved in your placement as you like. And then if we scroll down a bit more, so I've created the super exciting Investigating Unicorns project for illustrative purposes today, which is part of the School of Magic at the University of Edinburgh, a lesser known department. And then you can add other tags, is just for other relevant subjects to your project that aren't on the list. So maybe parts of it that are not so STEM related, but still related to your project. You can add those subjects in there, as well as students in their personal statements often mention other subjects that they're studying that they're interested in. So it's definitely worth adding those on there as well. And then you can pick how long your placement will last. So there's only two options this year. It's either 2 or 3 weeks. So that's going to be the main body of your placement. That's where all the students are going to do all of their data gathering and all their work in person with you. And then after those 2 or 3 weeks, they will start their write-up and creating their poster. So they'll still refer back to you for a bit of feedback on that sort of thing. But the 2 or 3 weeks will be the main kind of intensive period where you'll be working with them. And if you know when in the summer you'd like to host your student, you can put in the specific dates in that placement week section. And that's really useful because that can help us match you to students that are available at the times that you are. So if you do know that information, if you can pop that in when you register the placement, that'll be super useful for us working out all the logistics of who to match with who. And then if you scroll down a bit more, you can add the main body of text describing what your placement will involve. And the any requirements section, people generally put stuff like, for example, an interest in social sciences or a wee bit of experience with coding or something like that. It's up to you, whatever you think a kind of student might need to have or know before they undertake your placement. And then there's a place for you to upload your risk assessment forms, and we're going to talk about that a bit more later. And then there's a file attachment section, which is where I think we're going to ask you to upload your placement provider agreement form, which again we'll come on to a bit more in a minute. And then right at the bottom there, you can also see, you can see if you've got any early career researchers that are going to be involved in supervising your student. So if day to day one of your PhD students is going to be working with them or any other early career researchers, you can let us know. And I think they put that in their final reports of that it's kind of bringing on early career researchers in their kind of supervising experience, that sort of thing. So once you've done that, that's going to take you to this home screen dashboard thing on the system, which should look like this with your placement listed with you as the supervisor. And then you can click on it and you can see the details on the description and requirements, etc. And this is where we will match the student to you. So when we have matched a student to you, to your placement, you'll get an email that looks a bit like this, that's letting you know that once you log into your account, you'll be able to see the student that's been matched and you can see their application. So then you can go to your project on the system and see the student we've matched to your project. And I just matched my test student account to this, so it only says hello for personal statement, but you'll be able to read their whole personal statement there. And once you're happy with your matched student, you can hit the accept student button there. And then that will take you to your home screen and it's going to look like this with your accepted students listed. And you can look again to see their statements and things. So that's all for adding the placements to the system and accepting your matched students. So I was going to move on to safeguarding, but I'll just check because I think there's a question in the chat there. Yeah, so preference and number of weeks, ideally 2 weeks for the placement. And the third week is kind of wiggle room for if something goes wrong that you need to kind of fix or is going to take a bit longer than you initially expected. So I would aim for 2 weeks. And then that third week there is kind of wiggle room to give you a bit more time to get things tied up, that sort of thing. Aileen, you've got your hands up there. Have you got?
Yes, and I think it might tie in with the question that's just come in the chat.
Yes.
That what we have been doing is for the placements that we've got in the system, Laura and I have been selecting a number of students, and it's before it gets to the formal part on the system that Laura will send you the personal statements and the teacher reference of a number of students to give you the opportunity to pick the students that you like. We can't guarantee you'll get those students, but we find the people we've already engaged with, it works better that way to maybe give 3 or 4 students and say, well, if you're offering 2 placements, 2 out the 3, which 2 would you prefer to have? And then Laura will update the system, and that's where the student ID. So it should be unusual for you just to see the student coming up and then you say, oh, I don't have a choice. Do I pick them or do I not pick them? So there will be an intermediate part there where Laura will contact you with details of students and then you can analyse that. I think that's
a really good point. We shouldn't hopefully get to a point where a student kind of match comes to you out of the blue and you think, oh no, this is totally not the student for me. Yeah, as Aileen says, we will already have sent you some personal statements to choose from, and then try and match the students that you ask for as much as possible. But sometimes the students are getting sent out to a couple of different people as there's more than one person offering the same subject. So sometimes there's a bit of overlap in who wants which student. But yeah, where possible, we'll get the students to you that you ask for. So they definitely shouldn't come out of the blue. I can see a couple of other people are typing there. Are there any other questions at this stage? I feel like maybe there are, so I'll just give it another second or two there. Will I? Okay, I'll keep going and I can come back if anything else comes up. So yes, safeguarding was the next thing I was going to move on to. So I'll send out this safeguarding document, which I've screenshotted here, and that's got all the information in it that you will need. But just to give you a bit of a brief overview of that document, these are the kind of main takeaways from the safeguarding document. So the main one is that the young people that we work with are all over 16. So one of the requirements of the programme is that you have to be over 16. So they're all definitely over 16. And so that means you don't have to have a PVG. We would recommend one though in general, if possible, and you can get them for free by signing up as a STEM ambassador, which we're going to come back to in just a minute, as that is very much Aileen's specialist subject. And then the students need to have contact details of a main supervisor, which I assume is likely going to be yourselves, and they'll also have my contact details too. So online communication with the students, that can be done using whatever platform your organisation uses at the minute, so be that Teams, Zoom or whatever. And any calls should be recorded, which is not only good in terms of safeguarding, but it should also be useful for students to refer back to look over answers to any questions you've discussed, that sort of thing. And STEM learning or CERC may request to see those recorded in the event of any issue, but hopefully we shouldn't get to that stage. And then a few other things: when you're on calls, blurred backgrounds where possible should be used by both yourselves and students just to protect privacy. And you should also always communicate with the students through your official work channels. So please give them your work email, your work phone number, and not any personal emails or phone numbers, that sort of thing. Everything that you do with the student needs to be risk assessed. So if you already have existing risk assessments for all the activities you're going to do with the students, then feel free just to upload those. We don't want to kind of double any workloads, that sort of thing. But if you've not got risk assessments, there is a Nuffield template they can use, and I'm going to show that on the next slide, I think. And your organisation needs to have public liability insurance to host the students, which all universities should have, and hopefully the rest of your organisation should have too. But do just double check that one, and if there are any clauses about under 18-year-olds. And then last thing for this bit, because of GDPR, we can't give out the student details to you. So what we do is, once you've accepted a match, we'll give your details to the student and they'll get in contact with you from there. We will then agree on the activity between us and CERC, and maybe the student as well. We'll agree on the activities the student's going to do with you. And if there's any sensitive information, so any kind of IP considerations, that sort of thing that need to be taken into account, we'll do that at that stage. And any other special arrangements or adjustments that the student might need. And we'll agree on a reporting process for any incidents or issues as well. There's a flow of steps for that in the safeguarding document, and as I say, I'll send you that. So here's the Nuffield risk assessment template. Basically, you just need to identify each risk associated with every activity that you're going to do with a student, and you score its risk from low, medium, high, and then you put in whatever mitigation measures you've got in place within your organisation. And that's it really, and you can upload that to the Nuffield system within each placement. So you need to upload a risk assessment for each placement that you're hosting, but they can be the same if the students are doing the same activities, so you don't need to do different ones for each one if it's the same things that they're doing. So as I said, I'll just pass over to Aileen now quickly just to go over a wee bit the STEM Ambassador programme, because I think it can be really useful as an overlap between itself and Nuffield. So I'll pass over to Aileen now.
Thanks, Laura. Yes, I know a number of you on the call are already STEM ambassadors, so that's absolutely fine. For people that have never heard of the programme before, it's a UKRI funded programme across the whole of the UK. 37,000 ambassadors we're sitting at the moment, with 5,000 in Scotland. And the beauty about being a STEM ambassador is it's really helping you with your volunteering to be part of a big system. There's a big programme with a huge amount of support, a huge amount of extra training. You join as a STEM Ambassador volunteer, and it's very simple. You create a profile on the system, on the database. You go through a PVG check, which is free, and you go through an hour of online induction. And once you've done those two things, that's you an authorised ambassador on the system. You can choose that that's all you're doing is Nuffield, and then you record the fact you've done 60 odd hours for Nuffield volunteering, as on the screen there, and that counts as your STEM ambassador activity. And that can be used if you're applying for grant funding or for something else, or even for your professional development, to say, look, I've done that amount of volunteering. The beauty of joining the STEM Ambassador programme is it gives you access to a whole host of requests from schools, and you can choose to use those requests and volunteer for them, or else you can put an offer on the system that maybe your department's doing an open day and you want to be able to advertise your base and say Glasgow University are doing a special open day in the chemistry department, the School of Chemistry. Any teachers want to engage with us, then let us know. Teachers all over the country, all over the UK, put requests for either face-to-face or online help on the database, and ambassadors browse those requests and they decide if they want to help and volunteer that school. So number one, you'll be a STEM ambassador for Nuffield, which gives you a PVG check. It gives you that extra belt and braces. But also if you're interested in further STEM outreach, it gives you access to all that. And it also gives you access to an awful lot of training that the STEM Ambassador Hub runs throughout the year. Okay, you go to stem.org.uk to register as a STEM Ambassador, and the rest is absolutely self-explanatory. I'll pass you back to Laura. Thank you.
Thank you, Aileen. So yeah, I definitely recommend signing up to be a STEM Ambassador in general, but especially if you're going to be hosting Nuffield students. It's a really great way to kind of log all the work that you do for that. Okay, and then once you've done all of that and we're going to get into the final stages, the last form that we will have you fill out is the placement provider agreement form. And it looks a bit like this, but basically to distill it down, you have to put in the final agreed placement dates that you're going to offer, the number of students that you're going to host, and choose a deadline for when student written work is going to have to be submitted. So kind of however X many weeks after they've finished the in-person part of their placement. So as I say, we will get students to contact you, and once a student has got in contact, you can send them some slides. There's a template, a Nuffield template, which I will send out to all of you, and it's a few slides about you, what your job is, about your organisation, your colleagues, that sort of thing. You can fill all of that out, send that over to them, and that's a really nice kind of first way to make sure that they've got an overview of what you do and what they're going to be doing. And then from there you can start to schedule kind of any initial meetings and that sort of thing. Before they get started, they are going to be doing some online tutorials and that sort of thing as part of Nuffield, so they should come to you primed with lots of science skills that they'll be keen to test out with you. So what happens next then? So from here, get your placements onto the system. We would ideally like to have those on there by the end of the week. And then we will match a student to each of those placements. So all the student applications are in now. We've got students keen and waiting for placements. So we should be able to get you a student match pretty quickly. As Aileen said, we will send out a selection of student personal statements to you to give you a bit of choice. Once you've let us know who you like, we will then send over student matches for you to approve in the system. You'll get an email about that, and then the student will get in touch with you from there. I would say if you haven't heard anything from the student by a couple of weeks after we've kind of approved the match, then let us know and we'll give them another nudge to get in contact with you. It's exam time for these students and they all come from quite deprived backgrounds and schools and things, so they've got lots of other things going on, so they might take a wee while to get in contact, but they are definitely really keen, and yeah, we'll just give them another nudge. And then at the end of next month, we are going to be running a placement provider induction event, and that's going to take you through more of the framework of what the 2 weeks of their placements should look like, and it should get you all set to welcome the students in the coming weeks. So that's kind of all we had for this. I appreciate that going through lots of forms is a little bit dry, so I didn't want to take too long over it. But I do also appreciate that's quite a lot of information that I've thrown at you. So I'll just stop presenting there. And if anyone's got any questions, I think there's another one in the chat I've missed, isn't there?
There's a few in the chat, actually.
Right.
That there's one that Gillian asked that I couldn't actually answer.
Right, let's have a look at that one then.
When you talked about recording the calls.
Okay, let's look. Recording functionality has been disabled in Teams, so recording will be possible. Would this be an issue? So probably not. Hopefully, to be honest with you, we're hoping to have in-person placements, so there shouldn't be a huge amount of recording that needs to be done. If it's been disabled in Teams, could you maybe use Zoom? But I will look into that with STEM Learning and see what they say about that. And then there was another question that had come in. Where do I upload the agreement? I don't see any such option in the placement description. Yes, so the agreement, there isn't a specific place to upload that, but there is a files section within the placement, and I think that's where they need to go, but I'm going to double check that with STEM Learning as well. So if in doubt, it's that files bit just after the risk assessment will probably be where the agreement goes, but I will double check that. Last year we used Google Classroom and had specific Google Mail accounts for emails. Is that different this year? Yes, that is different this year. So last year all the placements were online, so they decided to use Google Classroom. This year we're hoping for all the placements to be in person, and Google Classroom has been completely scrapped, so you don't need to worry about separate Google Mail accounts or anything like that. Jason, how much face-to-face time should we provide? We're currently using blended working, part of the week in the office, part working from home. Should we always be on site if the students are present? That's a really, really good question. So ideally the students should get 2 weeks of face-to-face overall, but that doesn't need to be in a 2-week block. So if you're only in the office 3 days a week, then you can kind of spread your face-to-face time out over 3 or 4 weeks. But equally, you are welcome to do a bit of blended working with the students as well, where they can work at home for a couple of days. Ideally, they will be in person, but if that's not how you're working, then that's not how you're working. If the students are on site, it would be great to have someone present, but it doesn't need to be you as the main supervisor. It could be one of your PhD students that are also involved in the project. What's the deadline for the completion of all the necessary files, i.e. risk assessment and the agreement? That's a really good question. So it would be really great to have all the placement descriptions uploaded by the end of this week, because that we'll be able to use that to match the students. So we don't necessarily need a risk assessment to do that. So don't worry so much about that. Aileen, do you think, have we got a specific deadline for that?
Probably by the end of May, I would say, for the formal paperwork. But the important thing just now is for us to be matching with the placement. So
absolutely.
The paperwork, it's just to let you know what happens next in the process, because a number of you will have put placements on the system and then you'll be thinking, right, what's next? So it's to let you know that's the next stage in the process. And then we'll do another event like this towards the end of May saying, right, okay, you're just about to receive your student. What do you have to do when that student comes on site? So we're just trying to cut it up into wee chunks to make it easy for you to manage in that sense. And Gillian's just put on that Gillian and I only started talking about Nuffield last week, so she's not in a position to have that placement organised yet. But Gillian, if you could even just tell us maybe the likely number of placements, you can do this privately, but the number of placements and the area, it'll probably be engineering, I would expect, but it just helps us. We've got quite a lot of number of students in Ayrshire, so it will help us see whether these kids have to go to Glasgow or whether we can give them a placement in Ayrshire and that kind of thing. For Laura and I, the geography is the real critical thing at the moment. We're becoming experts on Google Maps, seeing if a child can get from Motherwell to Stirling by public transport, because we're obviously trying to make sure that the students we send to you to select from, that it's physically possible to get to your site. Before we then go back to the students saying, well, are you okay to go to Stirling? Is that something that you can manage? So we're just trying to do this in a controlled fashion to try and make sure everything's compatible in that sense.
Yeah, I would say if you can't give us all the information, the more information you can give us, the better. So yeah, if you even just know how many placements you're going to offer and literally just even what subject they are, that if you can get that on the system, that would be amazing for matching.
There's a question from Beth further up saying that if there's more than one supervisor, do all the supervisors have to sign the provider agreement?
Oh, that's a good question. I haven't really thought about that. I think it just comes from the main person, but I will check with Jennifer about that. Yes, we'll check that. Yeah, that's a really good question. We definitely welcome input from more than just the main supervisor. We're really keen for the students to get kind of as holistic a kind of experience of research life and kind of university or industry life as possible. So yeah, the more colleagues the better, but there will be one kind of main contact supervisor type person, so it'll probably just be that one person that has to sign that, but I'll look into it and I'll let you know. So next steps in terms of what next steps for yourselves will be to add placements, as much information as you can, and next steps from us will be that I will send you out the safeguarding document, the risk assessment template, the introducing yourself slide template. Anything else, Aileen? I think that's the main ones.
No, I think that's the
main ones. Yeah. So I'll get all that sent out to you after this call. So you should have all the information there. And if you think of any more questions once you've had a look over that paperwork, then just feel free to fire me an email and I will get back to you, and anything that I can't answer, as I say, we can ask them Learning, and they normally have an answer as well because they've been running this for longer than we have, so they're the experts.
And I have to say, I'm just going to say we're delighted at the quality of the students coming through, and I think the people we've already sent out to the providers, you've been quite pleased with the quality of the students as well. And what we were actually oversubscribed, so what we've got about 30 students that we've kept in reserve. So if a student for some reason has to drop out and you've gone to the effort of creating a placement, then we will go to the reserve list and then hopefully be able to backfill that so that all that work you're putting in is not gone to waste. So it's a shame for the 30 that are on the reserve list, but it's certainly a better situation than us putting through kids that maybe wouldn't be academically capable of the project, etc. We've tried to take the ones that are motivated and academically capable so that they get the most out of the experience. And the one last thing I want to say, if there's people from the same organisation on this call and they didn't realise that Glasgow, that there's other bodies participating from different departments, it's quite good for you maybe to collaborate and look at when your weeks are. And if at the same time, you maybe even get the kids all to meet up over lunchtime or something, even if they're in social sciences and some are in chemistry. If the dates overlap, it's quite nice for them all to meet each other and get together.
Yeah, we definitely find that the more peer support they have, the better. So yeah, if there's lots going to be at the same organisation, we have some universities are planning like campus tours and that sort of thing. So it might be nice to get all your students together at once and send them off to the kind of widening participation people or something like that, and give them an afternoon with them, that sort of thing. As more questions popping up in the chat here, if we're happy to accept more than one student, do I need to create a duplicate placement? Yes, please. So we can't match more than one student to one placement. So if you're planning on running similar topics, then please add each one for as many students as you're willing to accept. So yes, do create duplicates, and we match one student to each of those.
And that's actually, can I just interrupt there, something STEM Learning has asked us to do, that if you can put at the start of your placement, whether it's face-to-face, hybrid or online, we imagine 90% of them are face-to-face, but STEM Learning will receive all the placements. There's 17 hubs across the country doing this, so they want to see the percentage that are face-to-face compared to online. And rather than having to read through it and try and work it out, it's easy if you just put that code at the start of the text about your placement as to whether it's F2F or online or hybrid. That would be really useful. Okay.
Yeah, that's a good shout. Louise, can you send the names of the others on the other placement providers at University of Glasgow so we can collaborate? Yeah, absolutely. I can. I'll just send a group email to all of you so that you've got each other's email addresses, and yeah, then you can all get together and make a plan. Excellent. Okay, does anyone have any other questions before we head off? Hopefully that's all made some sort of sense. Yeah, looks like it. Fantastic. Well, as I say, do feel free to fire me an email, any emails that you, any questions that you come up with in an email, and I will get all of that information out to you. Thank you all so much for coming along today.